Hey, it's Joe. It's been a while. I'm here with my friend Alon Metrikin-Gold, and I was
Hi, Joe.
interested to learn that the sound O makes it sound like you are alone, but that's how you pronounce it. But
Exactly.
you're not alone at all. You're there with
No,
a wife and kids,
kid.
one child,
Yeah,
aged.
one child. Age, she's celebrating a year in 2 days.
Congratulations, Mazel
Thank
Tov.
you. Thank you.
You are in Haifa right now,
Yes, indeed.
and you joined CoVelocity just a few months ago,
Founded, to be honest.
right?
Founded together with two partners. Yeah.
Please tell
It's
us about it.
Sure. So it's our way of responding to the crisis. Me and my two partners have quite an extensive experience in the medical tech and social innovation spaces. So when the crisis hit, we were at a crossroads in any event, and we decided that instead of doing literally anything else, we're going to try to bring innovative solutions around COVID to markets that need it. So what our partnership does is exactly that. We work with diagnostic, with treatment support, with protective, anyone that has innovative tech related to COVID, and we help them go to markets that are in need. So we're doing work in Latin America, in Africa, Asia Pacific, areas in rural America, so you name it. So that's a relatively new partnership, but it's actually going quite well so far, even very well, because there's a big need and there's a lot of innovation there. So matching those two together is something we love to do.
If I'm not mistaken, you are not yet a member of my COVID-19 Slack channel, our chat.
Oh, no, I'm not. I'd love to join.
Yeah. So I'll just add this here.
And here I am. I was about to claim that I'm a big fan of you and your work, and I'm not even.
Yeah, I know it's embarrassing for us both. So, as you know, I lead this sizable group. And when the pandemic hit, I, like you, was thinking, surely God's put this large group in my hands for a reason, and maybe this is it. So I tried to think how I could be helpful um, during the pandemic, and I created this chat room, which now has 500 members.
That's
And
brilliant.
we had 14 conference calls between March and June, after which I stopped. I figured everyone pretty much knew where they were in terms of what their involvement was going to be.
Mhm.
Um, because when I started it, I was as flat footed as everyone else. I didn't know where to go. And the big talk back then was we need ventilators. And how are we going to make ventilators? And everyone needs PPE. And how are we going to get it from here to there? Over the course of the months that followed, I came to the conclusion that anyone planning to make a ventilator, whether open source or anyone who wasn't previously making ventilators, perhaps excluding General Motors and Ford, was chasing a folly. They would never come to market with it. In fact, even Dyson, who did get a product that was pretty much ready to market for the NHS says, no, we're good by the time that came to bear. And they had spent millions on it.
Mhm.
Um, so, what I thought of as the three-pronged approach for anything I might be able to help with was ventilators, PPE, which continues. I have people ask me for masks and gloves in particular in quantity, millions of units. And my wife now, it's almost like a full-time job for her.
Mhm.
It was about time she got off the couch. I don't mean any offense. But our kids are 18 and 16, and she's been out of the workforce for a while. And it's enriching for us both to see her so engaged again with adults.
Mhm.
Um, the third being diagnostic tests. We've had some conversations about that. Some of those are coming online. The progress is somewhat elusive. I'm unclear about where things are today. And I never approached vaccines. That's pharma, completely different category.
Mhm.
I give you this background because I feel as though my contribution, while valuable for some, and certainly I think calming for many in the beginning when they felt so disconnected and they needed someone to kind of bring us together and talk. I had a forum for that. That was great. But in terms of um, material improvements to our global pandemic. No, it was ambitious to begin with. But you've set your sights on this, and I believe it's full-time work for you.
Absolutely.
So
Twice the amount. Yeah.
what successes, if any, have you had, and what can we learn from you?
Sure. So thank you. I think before I touch on the successes, I think you do touch on something very significant, which is no one has a magic 8 ball. Literally, we're all just throwing things at the wall and hoping that they stick. Um, there is something that seemed to be quite consistent, which is there is a huge gap between the amount of screening that needs to be done and the screening capacity there is in any given location. Even in Israel, where I live, we're about to go into a second lockdown this week. It's going to be 2 weeks of full lockdown and then another month or so of very strict regulations. And even Israel, which is a completely controlled environment, failed at screening a large amount of the population. And we have a centralized HMO, and everyone is relatively compliant, etc. So our big success, and this connects to the success, our big success was in supporting the screening effort. We have been working with diagnostic manufacturers located in the United States and helping them get their tests to countries that were not prioritized by the large testing corporations. That even Abbott is now coming out with a rapid antigen test. They also have a manufacturing capacity, and that capacity will go to countries that can afford it. And there is a priority list. So we are looking at the bottom of the list and seeing how can we get the tests to the places that need it. So that's been where we've seen success and where we've tried to contribute. And I very much connect to the energy of realizing that everything during this pandemic comes to an end very quickly, and going assumptions of even 3 months ago are no longer relevant today.
I see.
Yeah. So I don't know if this success will continue in 2-3 months from now, but it is impactful, and that is something that I think you and me both find very important in what we do. That there's a double bottom line to anything that we do.
I am attempting, but maybe not succeeding, share screen. Here we go. This is, I put this link in the comments for the folks watching. Israel is 24th in terms of death count, but you're doing, I'd say, remarkably well. Deaths per million population is 122, which is way down the list. Let me see.
Yeah.
There you are. You're 55th. I'm afraid that my country boasts 11th place with 600. So we're almost 6 times worse than you. I was surprised when you just said that you're about to go into a second lockdown.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that? I was unaware.
Sure. So Israel, like the United States, is I have a sociology background, so I can completely go on a tangent here about the Israeli demographics. But in a sentence, we could be described as tribal demographics, meaning there are strong ethnic populations which are very different in their behaviors. So although we have a strong health system, although we have a strong backbone, there is a lot of different populations that behave very differently. So when there wasn't adherence to the recommendations of the Ministry of Health, and there was confusion in the population as to what needs to be done. There was also criticism of opening up too fast, too soon. Things started going down very quickly, and the amount of people infected by day, we all know that exponential graph started going out of control. And there was a benchmark which they said in the Ministry of Health that if we would hit the 1,000 people infected per day, then we would go into lockdown, and we quickly reached that, and the lockdown wasn't far. Also, we're entering the high holidays season now in Israel,
Of course.
which is significant for many people here. And
Oh, that's interesting. So is the lockdown to prevent mass congregations in synagogue?
I think that at this stage, anything I say will be a political matter. The country has been at its wit's end as to whether this is political or not, whether this is mismanagement or not.
Believe me, I get my share of that over here.
Exactly. So there is a lot of high criticism and high emotion going on right now about the situation, because a lot of people here feel that this was more of a management crisis than a, just it kind of happened crisis.
Mhm. And is that accentuated by virtue of the fact that you're going to a second lockdown? Because I don't think, certainly under the current administration's management and positioning, that our country has the willingness to endure another lockdown.
Yeah. So that's really interesting because at this stage in Israel, it feels to some extent that each group, each ethnic group, or each demographic group, because it's not only Arabs and Jews, there's groups within the Jews, and groups within the Arabs, Muslims, Arabs, Christians, Arabs, ultra-Orthodox, religious, etc. So it feels that if one group doesn't adhere to the lockdown, for example, if the ultra-Orthodox congregate significantly in synagogues, then the seculars will start congregating significantly on the beach, So
It's like the prisoner's dilemma, and you're like,
exactly.
hey, I'm being good, and everyone else is benefiting, and I'm not.
Exactly.
I hear you. I'm going through that right now.
Yeah. So effectively, the country kind of has gone into lockdown as a way of solving the prisoner's dilemma. Meaning, if you can't learn to share, then we're just going to take the toy away, the toy of freedom. And to add to that, one of the reasons they say that the death rate is very low in Israel is that we have a very young population, relatively. So although there is a significant amount of infected people, then most of them are young, and then it's not felt so much. So that's just a thought about that.
Let me redirect you. Let me redirect you, because I think we could go down this rather far. Tell us about your work. What was, how did it come about that you picked your two colleagues? Are they friends of yours from university? Were they work colleagues of yours? And how did you set about starting an initiative?
So Ariel and Yael, those are my colleagues. We've been working together for the past 6 years. Ariel founded a previous company that Yael and I walked through the door 6 years ago at, which is called Mobile ODT, which was dedicated for women's health. We worked we worked on cervical cancer and sexual assault documentation, and I talked earlier about double bottom line, so I'm proud to say that in 5 years of clinical work, we screened 120,000 women in 42 countries and 42 states. So when we came to this crossroads of leaving Mobile ODT, for us, it was just a decision that we wanted to continue to work together, and this opportunity created itself, or we created it. And we've been running with it ever since. And the work, one of the reasons I told you I've been a fan of you for a while now, and I've been following
you. It's a big part of the conversation, folks. Everyone pay attention.
Because for a few years now, I've been following your content and the work of in the group, in the LinkedIn group, and I never kind of mustered up the courage to reach out. And then I was very pleasantly surprised when you responded so quickly, asking, how can we connect? And then I told you about this big gap that I saw, and you thought that was interesting. This gap I actually saw in the previous place I was working. And in way of background, I've been in the medical tech or medical innovation space for the past 8 years. I've worked in a mobile ODT, before that in lobbying against anti-human trafficking, digital sexual education, creating emergency clinics in East Jerusalem, now a refugee clinic in Haifa. So I'm very much interested in this access to health issue, or how technology contributes to access to health. And one of the things that I encountered very strongly in all of these spaces is what you might call the medical device graveyard. It's that basement at the bottom of the hospital that all of the medical devices go to die. And they go there either because the battery ran out and there isn't a technician that can come and change it, or because just the doctor changed and the new doctor didn't learn how to use the equipment, or just it was too complicated in the first place and the instructions were in English and just the staff all happens to not speak English.
This is not unique to your country, by the way.
This is not unique to Israel. I actually, to be honest, most of my work was outside of Israel. I'm much more familiar of work in literally anywhere else than in Israel. Only now with the COVID crisis, I've started to learn the Israeli space more intimately. So this issue of kind of the medical device graveyard connects very strongly to a position that exists in other tech, which is customer success. When I called a customer success training center in Israel, I asked them, could you connect me with customer success people in MedTech? They said no. I asked, why not? She said, it just doesn't exist. What do you mean it doesn't exist? She just, medical tech doesn't think that way. They don't think in the way of customer success. So here I want to pitch to you why customer success is relevant, and also why it's relevant to COVID. Why the crisis can't throw everything out of the window. So even now it's relevant. So basically, customer success allows for three things which are very significant to any business. The first is repeat sales. So for example, in mobile ODT, we had close to 40 to 50%, depending on which year, of repeat sales. And this is medical devices. This isn't software. This isn't kind of returning annual subscriptions. They just bought more and more machines. And second of all, the solution doesn't go to the graveyard. It keeps living inside the clinic. And third of all, you get to save more lives. So for me, that kind of is very, very relevant. And I think I can go into a few things now, but I don't want to dominate the conversation.
I am interviewing you. I know what I know. I want to hear what you know. But we've talked about a couple things already, and for our listeners, I want to give a little bit of structure. Mm-hmm. We talked about where our countries are with COVID and how we are managing the situation. We've begun to talk about customer success in MedTech, which is how I titled today's talk, because that's what we said we were going to talk about. But frankly, I'm acutely interested in specific COVID activities you've taken that you believe have had a material impact.
Okay.
If Absolutely. You could, let's focus on that for a moment.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that, and all other topics out of the window. So I think that what had material impact so far has been getting tests to countries in Central America that did not have access to tests at all, full stop.
Did you serve as a broker in that regard? You knew where tests were, you knew where they were needed, and you got them shipped where they needed to go?
Exactly. That's
How did
the
you do
first
that?
That's an interesting story because we were connected. We have an extensive network of distribution channels, of distribution people that we know. So the commercial side, we have strong. At the clinical side, you need to know, you need to know your market. You need to know which lab to go to. But that's where we rely on the local agents. So we knew the people in the countries in Central America that could do the boots on the ground work, go to the central lab, get the test, get the validation. The process of introducing a COVID test to the market is complicated but relatively straightforward in that you have
Did
a
they get
test.
the equivalent of an Emergency Authorization Act there?
Yes. So that's the first thing you
It wasn't
need.
getting PPE from one place to another. It was getting it cleared for commercialization,
Mhm.
but that's significant. How were your tentacles able to reach that far?
Um,
You just knew a guy?
I think it wasn't just knowing a guy. We work with manufacturers that take care of the primary registration for the FDA and the CE. Once they have, and one of the tests that we're working on right now, a rapid antigen test, does not yet have FDA. We applied to the FDA, but we don't have FDA. We only have CE. We can start working anywhere else. So that's great. So once we have the primary authorization, then we start working on the local authorization. That we do through bringing a limited amount of tests into the country, getting it to either a primary lab, so it's a highly respected and known hospital lab, or the government lab, and we do a validation. It's a few hundreds to a few thousand tests. For example, in Africa now, we're doing a validation in one country of 300 tests they ask for, another country they ask for 5,000 tests. Fine. So we get them the tests, we do the validation. You do it on positives and negatives, and you show that you have on very, very high accuracy levels, right? So one of the things that we said we put to ourselves as one of our values is that we're working with very, very good technology. And we're not trying to sell snake oil to countries in need. That completely beats the purpose of what we're trying to do. So the tests have been validated. Well, the PCR test that I'm talking about has been validated by the WHO, has been validated in the US by Dartmouth Hitchcock. So it got the FDA, EUA, it got CE. Everything is 100% legit, or like we say in Israel, kosher. So
That's funny. I'm from Brooklyn and I married a Jew, so I got you.
You're probably more kosher than I am.
I don't think that's true. If you saw me looking off to the side on my second monitor, I was looking at your education, a master's degree in medical anthropology.
Yes.
I don't typically hear that terminology together, but it sounds as though you've got your fingers in regulatory and quality and distribution. Really, I know you position yourself as a general manager, entrepreneur, but it really seems as though your knowledge runs deep, and you look like maybe 32.
I'm celebrating 33 actually next week. That's a very good guess you had there.
There we go.
I indeed am relatively young, but I think I told you, like we started in the private session earlier, I'm very committed. So you can get a lot done in 8 years. I did 8 years of medical work, so and counting. I did 8 years of intelligence in various sides, military, business. So it adds up, I think.
I also, and I am redirecting a bit
Yeah.
because these conversations pretty much go as long as we feel like talking. But
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily mean that our listeners choose to listen that long. So I would like to leave those who are getting itchy to hit the escape button.
Yes.
Who should contact you for what?
Okay. We work on two fronts. First of all, manufacturers that have technology that is either at early stages, not yet ready to go to market, or is just about to go to market. It's mature enough. is just about to submit for regulatory, or thinking about it, or just submitted or just got it and wants to open up to new markets, please come to us. We work in multiple markets and have very strong connections, mostly in COVID, also in women's health. Those are our two strong legs. Those are manufacturers. The second arm is or distributors. The second arm is distributors, or laboratories or hospitals looking for solutions. We have those solutions. They're very good solutions. So that, I think, is the two audiences, and you can reach out to us through our website, CoVelocity.health. There you can also see kind of our product catalog, what we have to offer right now. We're constantly updating it. And that's, I think, kind of how.
So I'm going to type that in here, CoVelocity.health, which I think these alternate dots confuse a lot of people. They're like, is it .com after that? It's like, no, that is the extension. They're like, oh. So I just put that in there. You must know Ronnie Schifrin, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you worked with him?
No, only heard of him. I think we shaked hands a couple of times. But,
pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
Yeah, you don't shake.
Bumps.
Because as you know, he's got what's the word I'm looking for? An incubator, and he's, I think, not only done it in Israel but also in the Far East.
Right.
So I wonder if there's any resource there that can help you.
That's interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Do you think that there's anything that I or my network could do for your effort?
I think that we are all about getting very, very good COVID technology and solutions out there. They are clinically validated, regulatory approved, and at a very good price. So if that is of interest to people in the network, then we would happy to have a discussion and see how we can help. I think if to wrap it up in kind of 30 seconds, we talked about customer success. We did not stop at getting the tests into the market, but we made sure that the labs using the tests, this is diagnostics, this can also be true for the other solutions that we were working on, we made sure that they know how to use it. And we made sure that the manufacturer is talking consistently on a weekly basis to the labs and training the personnel. So there's a proper onboarding process. And after the onboarding process, we're circling back with the people that purchased the tests to make sure that they were aware of the results of the validations, that they were aware of the current usage. We circled back with the people that made the decision to introduce the test into the lab. So I think that's kind of the customer success side that I promised would be related to COVID. I think the key element here is engagement, and we're constantly trying to engage all of the different stakeholders to make sure that everything is in place and everything is aligned, because that way our tests don't go to the graveyard and don't go discarded when new technology is introduced.
When we conclude and you go on to LinkedIn, where I've been broadcasting live, you'll see in the comments something from my friend Jonas, who writes that he is a bioengineer and a clinician in Texas with a pipeline of medical innovations. Would welcome the opportunity to discuss with you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jonas.
Now, of course, Jonas and Alon, you know that because this connection has happened during one of our conversations, if there is any money to be made, I collect 75% of it. You guys can do with the rest as you like.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, we talked about that, so that's a joke.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, happy Rosh Hashanah.
Thank you, and to you too. A kosher Rosh Hashanah to you.
And I'm so grateful that you joined me today.
And I'm grateful for this opportunity. Like I said, I've been a big fan, and it's wonderful to speak in person.
Okay, my ego is stroked adequately. Thank you. I also have in there the link to the chat room, so we can keep on very easily that way. And I can introduce you to the long-suffering Mrs. Hage, who is now kind of COVID central here for the group.
Great.
Okay?
Okay.
Alon, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for watching.